You've probably heard of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's one of the most critical arteries for trade on the entire planet. We're about to walk through a scenario that plays out right there, and it shows just how quickly the global order we all depend on can dissolve into total chaos.
You know, the biggest crises, they almost never start with a bang. It's usually the opposite. So I want you to imagine the scene. This narrow stretch of water, the only way to get from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. And for just a moment, everything is still.
On the surface, it really just looks like any other sunrise. But this isn't just any body of water. This is a strategic choke point. We're talking about a place where nearly a fifth of the world's daily oil supply passes through. So the calm here, it's always fragile.
All right, let's dive in. We're going to start by exploring this very delicate moment of peace, the everyday routine that really just masks an ever-present risk.
The first rays of sun are just starting to hit the water. It's a picture of total tranquility, which is a wild contrast to the billions of dollars in cargo just floating on its surface. It's like the entire global economy is holding its breath, and it doesn't even know it. The rhythm of the sea is gentle, almost hypnotic. For the crews on those massive tankers navigating the channel, it just feels like another day at the office. Routine is the best defense against fear, right? But it offers absolutely no protection from reality.
For the men and women on these ships, this is business as usual. And that sense of normalcy, that assumption that the passage will be safe, well, that's the invisible lubricant that keeps global trade moving, and it's about to be shattered. Because unseen and unheard, a threat is already in motion. The calm isn't peace, it's a facade. A countdown has started, and nobody, not a single person, even realizes the clock is ticking. And right here, this is where that fragile peace is broken for good. This is the moment everything changes. Just like that, a single, distant pinpoint of light. It's so fast you might question if you even saw it, but you did. And it's the very first signal that the world has just been fundamentally altered. This isn't some big naval battle. It's an ambush, a commercial vessel struck without any provocation. The silence is broken, not by diplomacy or negotiation, but by a sudden, calculated act of aggression. That explosion, that's just the catalyst. See, the real damage isn't to a single ship's hull. It's the chain reaction of fear that follows.
So what happens in those first few moments? First, just pure confusion. Radio channels are lighting up. Was it an accident, an attack? Who's responsible? And that void, that lack of information, it gets filled immediately with fear. It spreads from one crew to the next. The logical response is caution, so ships slow down. But that caution turns into paralysis, fast. Captains start refusing to enter the strait, and suddenly you have a traffic jam of supertankers. The choke point isn't flowing anymore. It's clogged. The lifeline is severed. So we've seen the strike and the immediate paralysis. Now, let's unpack the global consequences, because this is where it gets really serious. That single explosion was not just an attack on a ship. No, it was an attack on the system itself, on the fundamental assumption of safe passage that our entire global economy is built on. It proved just how easily the whole thing can be brought to a grinding halt. And that's the real takeaway here. The Strait of Hormuz is just one of many of these lifelines. And so the crucial question we're left with is this. In our deeply interconnected world, what are the true cascading consequences for oil prices, for supply chains, for global stability, when one of these arteries is suddenly and violently closed? That is something to think about.
One that's fought not with armies on a battlefield, but with these quiet, calculated moves that can literally send ripples across the entire globe. This is the story of the invisible weapon. You know, it all starts with this really simple but kind of chilling idea. In a lot of modern conflicts, the biggest threats aren't the loud ones. They're not announced with sirens or huge explosions. No, they're the ones you just never see coming. A silent, creeping danger. And this, well, this is the tool for the job. Meet the limpet mine. It's small, it's powerful, and it is built for one thing: stealth. This isn't a weapon that needs some giant missile silo or a bomber plane. All it needs is a quiet approach in some dark water so it can be attached right to its target. So once that mine is in place, you know what happens? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Its real power isn't just the bang at the end, but the tense, silent waiting game. It's a threat just held in suspense. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one little device. Placing one of these is never, ever an isolated event. It's always a single, calculated step in a much, much bigger and very deliberate plan. So the target isn't really just one ship, it's the very artery of global trade itself. See, if you focus on a critical choke point, one of those narrow straits that thousands of ships have to squeeze through, you can take a really small action and get a massive, massive impact. And this, right here, shows you the chain reaction they're going for. It's a pretty slick four-step process. First, you target the lane. Then, you attach the device. And that single threat, just one, forces all the other ships to change what they're doing. They have to slow down, they have to take longer routes, and suddenly the whole system just starts to clog up. And this really is the core philosophy behind the whole operation. Our modern world, it runs on this incredibly fine-tuned logistical clock. Oil, food, all our electronics, pretty much everything moves on these giant ships. So if you introduce even a tiny delay, just a little bit of fear, you can create these huge economic shockwaves that are felt all around the planet. But all these grand strategies and economic impacts, they're really only one part of the story. There's another cost, a much more personal one that often gets completely overlooked when we're talking about global choke points in supply chains. Which kind of forces us to ask, right? When we talk about disrupting shipping lanes, what are we really talking about? What is the actual, tangible, human price of this invisible war? The answer, of course, is people. It's so easy to forget that every one of those little dots on the shipping map, every vessel in that lane, is a workplace. It's a temporary home for a whole crew of sailors, engineers, and captains who are just trying to do their jobs. And for every single person on those ships, there are people back on land. Families, just going about their daily lives. But they're acutely aware that someone they love is thousands of miles away, smack in the middle of a potential danger zone. And this is the real, unseen, emotional toll. It's that quiet worry, that constant hope that no news is good news. It's that low-level anxiety that just sits with you, knowing that a silent, invisible threat could change your life in an instant. Okay, so as this whole situation gets more and more complex, so do the ways it's being watched. Let's shift our whole perspective now, from the water to way, way up above. Because there's another player in this game we haven't talked about. This is the idea of an omniscient observer, high up in the stratosphere, totally unseen by anyone on the ground. Incredibly advanced technology is monitoring this whole situation. It's adding this whole other layer of surveillance to this very human drama. And listen, this isn't just passive observation. Oh no, it is active, it's persistent, and it's incredibly patient. This eye in the sky is logging every ship's speed, every tiny deviation from its course, every small boat that gets anywhere near a tanker. It's just collecting data, waiting for that one moment that gives the whole plan away. And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the old versus the new. On one hand, you've got a human lookout who is limited by, their own senses and the fact that they get tired. But a military drone, its range is hundreds of miles. It never gets tired, it operates 24/7, it can see in heat through clouds, and it does all of this from a perspective that makes it basically invisible. It's a total game changer in what it means to watch a conflict unfold. So here's where it all comes together. We've seen a covert weapon, a global economic strategy, a hidden human cost, and this all-seeing technological eye. And it all leads to one really essential question. If the weapon is invisible and its impact is felt in stock markets and family homes thousands of miles away, how do you even define war anymore? When we think of destruction, we usually picture chaos, right? Just random, explosive force. But what if I told you that sometimes ruin isn't random at all? What if it's a plan, a design? What if it has an architecture? That's what we're digging into today. This quote just flips everything we think we know on its head. We expect destruction to be fast, loud, furious. But this idea, it's built on the complete opposite. It's not about speed. It's about patience. It's about being deliberate. It's about being careful. So that leads us right into the very first phase of this architecture, the measured response. And notice that word measured. This isn't some knee-jerk reaction. It's a calculated move. The whole thing is built on watching, on planning, way before a single move is ever made. And here it is, laid out. It's a sequence. And you'll notice that ACT is the last thing on the list. First, you just watch the system. You learn it. Then, you analyze it. figure out its strengths, but more importantly, its weaknesses. You make a precise plan. And only then, when you've accounted for everything, do you finally act. It's almost like a scientific method for deconstruction. Okay, so once the plan is set, we move into the second phase, the art of precision. And the word art here is so important. This isn't about just throwing everything you have at a problem. No, this is about surgical focus. It's about strategy. Exactly. The goal isn't to just create a huge mess. It's not about widespread damage. In fact, sometimes a big, chaotic attack can just make a system stronger, more determined. But a single, perfectly placed strike, that can shatter it from the inside. We're talking maximum impact with minimum effort. And this is really the perfect way to picture it. Brute force, that's a sledgehammer. It's messy, it's chaotic, it's all over the place. But precision, that's a scalpel. It's about control. It's about finding that one single part of the structure that holds everything else up and just snipping it. The rest will take care of itself. 1. That's it. That's the whole game. This isn't about hitting 10 targets or even 5. It's about 1. All your energy, all your focus, it's all aimed at one single critical weak spot. You find that one linchpin and you apply all the pressure right there. And when you break that one critical point, well, what comes next is pretty much guaranteed. It's the final phase, the inevitable collapse. And that word, inevitable, is everything. Because of all that careful planning, all that precision, this outcome isn't just a possibility, it's a certainty. At first, you might not even see it on the surface. The impact isn't obvious, but it's traveling deep into the system's foundations, right into the places that were designed to be the safest. And all of a sudden, those fortified rooms, those reinforced cores, the places that were supposed to be untouchable, they're not anymore. They're completely exposed. And right there, that's the moment it's all over. The core has been breached. The illusion of safety is gone. From here on out, total collapse is just a matter of time. And that's when you see the whole thing start to unravel. That one single strike causes cracks to just spiderweb through the whole system. The lights flicker out. The walls start to give way. It's a total systemic failure. And it's all coming apart from the inside. So let's pull back for a second, because this isn't just about buildings or bunkers, is it? Think about it. What happens when the core of any system is compromised? A company's reputation, a political ideology, even a personal belief you've held your whole life. What happens when that one central pillar is knocked out? And I want to leave you with this final thought. We've talked all about destruction as a careful, precise process and architecture. But the exact same principles apply to creating something, don't they? The same focus, the same analysis, the same precision. So the real question isn't just about ruin. It's, what are you choosing to build?
It's about a world where total chaos on the water gets replaced by this almost unsettling perfect calm. But, this kind of peace, it comes with a price, and it's enforced by a new kind of guardian, silent ones. So let's get right into it.
Our story really kicks off right here, in this moment of lingering tension. You know that feeling? The fight is over, but the danger? Well, the danger doesn't feel like it's gone. That sense that it's all just waiting right below the surface. That's the problem we're about to tackle.
So first, to really get the solution, you have to see the problem up close. And the problem is a sea of pure, unfiltered chaos. This is what it looks like when things go wrong out on the water.
Okay, so picture this. It's not just one boat. It's a whole bunch of them. Small, super agile attack boats. They just pop up out of nowhere, moving so fast that they're almost impossible to track. And in an instant, a totally calm seascape becomes a full-blown conflict zone.
And here's what makes it so brutally effective. They're coordinated. This isn't just random. Think of it like a swarm. They attack all at once, from different directions, completely overwhelming any normal defense. It's a situation that's incredibly difficult to handle with a conventional response. But that chaos is met with a response, a very decisive one. And that brings us to our second act, how control is taken back through direct, human-led action. And you can almost feel the entire vibe shift. That frantic, crazy energy from the attack, it starts to fade away as a much more powerful, organized force arrives. Little by little, piece by piece, order starts to come back to the water.
and it happens systematically. First, you've got to pick out the individual targets from that messy swarm. Then, one by one, those threats are stopped, they're neutralized, and finally, the whole area is secured. It works, for sure, but the key thing to remember is that it's all reactive. It happens after the attack has already begun. Okay, you're going to want to pay close attention here, because this is the pivot point for our entire story. On the left, you've got the response we just saw. It's decisive, it gets the job done, but it's always reacting to a problem. But on the right, that's the solution. And look at those words: persistent, proactive, and maybe most important, machine-led.
And that brings us right into our third section, the silent guardians. This is where we see the big shift from human reaction to something totally different: autonomous security. A system that's designed to stop the chaos before it can even start.
And just like that, the new players are on the field. This isn't just a small tech upgrade. This is a fundamental change in how this patch of sea is managed, how it's controlled. The responsibility is literally handed over.
So what exactly are these machines? Well, let's call them autonomous sentinels. Basically, they're robotic systems built to do one job: to monitor, patrol, and secure an area completely on their own. There's no human with a joystick making every single move.
So here's the crucial difference in their mission. They're not just sitting on standby, waiting for an alarm to go off. Their whole purpose is to be a constant presence. They're always watching, creating this permanent, proactive shield of protection over the water.
Which brings us to our final section, the new calm. Because with this new machine-enforced peace comes a different kind of feeling. And now we have to talk about the unspoken cost of all this safety.
And you can't argue with the result. That chaos we saw at the beginning, it's just gone. In its place is this deep, steady quiet. The water is safe, period.
And with that safety, life gets back to normal. Those commercial ships that were once targets, now they move freely. The sea can be a channel for trade and transport again. So on the surface, this looks like a complete success, right?
But here it is. This is the real tension in this new reality. Yeah, everything looks normal. It definitely feels safe. But underneath all that calm, something fundamentally is different. The peace itself feels engineered.
And that leads us to this massive question. What's the trade-off for this kind of perfect, machine-guaranteed safety when every single inch of the water is being monitored 24/7 by autonomous sentinels? Is it the same sea as it was before? Is a sea under constant watch still truly free?
And really, that's the final thought here. The change we've witnessed isn't some temporary fix. It is a permanent transformation. The peace is real, but the world itself has been altered in a way that can't be undone. It will simply never be the same again. And that's something to think about.
Please subscribe to discover unsolved mysteries of all time. Include a mix of ancient mysteries, famous disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and historical enigmas from around the world. Thanks.